God created the world on Monday, but on Sunday, God abandoned the world after he realized heaven and hell were too crowded. As a result, people stopped dying. Even as their hearts stopped beating, and even as their flesh rotted, the dead kept moving. Granting one last miracle before turning away forever, God created gravekeepers, mystical beings capable of putting the dead to rest through a proper burial. I, a cheerful but naive young girl, serves as her village's gravekeeper in place of her late mother, named Alpha. Nobody in her village has died ever since. She takes pride in her job, although she is tempted to be spoiled by the villagers' treats. While staying with her foster parents, Yoki and Anna, the latter can't help but lament that I is unhappy with her life, although I believes that her father, Hampney Hambart, will visit one day. One day, after digging enough graves for the villagers, she returns to town only to find it empty. Then she bumps into a white-haired man, who surprisingly learns that she is the village gravekeeper before he inquires about the whereabouts of a woman named Hana. But I doesn't know, and she asks about him. He introduces himself as a man-eating toy, Hampney Hambart. She really believes him and tells him that he shares the same name as her real father, much to his objection. But Hampney has a request for her, a job that gravekeepers can only do. While passing through the village, I is devastated to see everyone in town dead, even her foster parents, Yoki and Anna, before being approached by the wounded farmer, Udo. Still walking despite a fatal gunshot to the head, and his zombie-like acting is scaring I. But Udo defends I while drawing a gun on Hampney. Hampney warns Udo that he has 3 seconds to do whatever he wants before he blows his brains out. Udo jumps to protect I, but he is shot in the head. Hampney says he made sure everyone else was dead by taking out their brains, but somehow he got careless with Udo. I becomes upset and accuses him of killing everyone. On the contrary, he says he only immobilized them, and only a gravekeeper can kill. I then charges at Hampney in a fit of rage, but is kicked unconscious. She eventually wakes up and walks outside to see him. She admits that Hampney isn't her father due to his cruelty. Then Hampney tasks her with burying her entire village. After I buries them all, she follows Hampney out of town, where he tells I that she isn't a gravekeeper since she possesses both parents and emotions. They just pop up like flies. Hampney continues that gravekeepers will never have hatred feelings and will never strike a human. And if you want to see what a real gravekeeper looks like, there's one right behind her. Hampney introduces I to Scar, a true gravekeeper, and questions her about the whereabouts of Hana, but she does not know her. He tasks her with burying the villagers. Scar reveals that I is indeed a gravekeeper since she already took care of the burials, much to Hampney's surprise. After Scar leaves, Hampney mercilessly questions I about what she intends to do now that she has nowhere to go. I tells him that she wants to go where people need a gravekeeper, but Hampney punches her and points his gun. He warns her of the cruelty this world has and wants her to forget she is a gravekeeper. Suddenly, Hampney is shot in the chest. A man with a rifle quickly takes I away. Hampney stands up and recognizes him as Sakuma, his childhood friend, who claims to want revenge for Hampney killing his undead wife. Sakuma reveals Hampney as the Eternal One, which means he can't die and is his enemy. Hampney explains that his family is dead and is living in the deep mountains. He hates the dead and can't stand the way they're carrying on living, even if they are happy with their ways. He knows Sakuma is here so that he can be killed by him, and revenge is just an excuse. Unwilling to listen, Sakuma threatens I and demands a duel from Hampney. Hampney will grant him his wish, but it will be a meaningless death. If he still wishes to fight him, then face him at the town square tomorrow at dawn. Later, I sees Hampney leaving town. Clearly, he is bailing on the duel, as he doesn't want to kill Sakuma. She follows him since she wants to be a gravekeeper and help those who need her. During their journey, I trips but is embarrassed. Hampney is willing to give her a piggyback ride. That night, when Hampney learns her age, he realizes why she is a gravekeeper. When God abandoned the world 15 years ago, those left behind couldn't reproduce either. Thus, there can't be humans around I's age. This means I must be conceived between a human and a gravekeeper. He explains his belief that God had grown weary of his duty and resorted to granting desires, the first being humanity's wish for eternal life, followed by his own desire for true immortality to overcome his weak body. Sometime after the half-dead fever pandemic gripped the world, the dead started walking, and the mysteriously appearing gravekeepers were the only ones who could help the undead find peace. Hampney adds that if a person dies a clean death, they barely change, but over time they regress into a horrific monstrous state, which is why he put down Sakuma's wife. Finally, I asks Hampney why he killed the townsfolk, and he reveals that she will eventually find out, along with the secret hidden within her village. A flashback shows Lady Alpha and her daughter, I, overlooking their village. Alpha once told I she wanted to make this village look like heaven, where the dead can be happy. I continues her journey with Hampney as he searches for Hana, the woman he loved and spent a short time with before she mysteriously disappeared at the height of the chaos 10 years ago. He is also searching for a way to end his life, since the thought of being the last living human terrifies him. I deduces that he merely acts cruelly to hide his pain. Suddenly, a projectile is shot into the sky. Hampney thinks he is screwed up and pushes Ai off the bridge and down into the river. When she wakes up, Sakuma is by her side, and he reveals Hampney has saved her from an ambush. Sakuma also notes that Hampney does not like meaningless violence and has his own sense of morality, and he shows Ai a picture of Hampney's lover, whom Ai shockingly acknowledges as her mother. And now Ai is convinced he is her father. Sakuma then calls Hampney an undying monster, and Ai yells at him, saying that she wants to find Hampney and to stop him from becoming even more twisted. Sakuma decides to help Ai rescue Hampney, and then they are approached by Scar. Elsewhere, Hampney reawakens to find himself held captive by a band of undead psychopaths. Their leader, a man called Hiko, starts taunting Hampney, who reveals that his true wish is to live a happy life and then contently die with few regrets while surrounded by those who care for him. Hiko is not happy over this betrayal and is going to kill him when Scar breaks down the door, and she has come to bury them. Ai walks into the room and reveals a shocking revelation to Hampney, that she is in fact the daughter of Hana, and also that she is realizing that everyone in her village had died long ago, but they had pretended to be alive for her sake. Hiko breaks up this touching moment and is going to kill Ai, thinking torturing her will make Hampney happy. Sakuma's bullet strikes away at his gun. It descends into a big brawl. Ai and her comrades fight undead psychopaths. Hampney has time to reflect on how Hana did everything without telling him. Left him without telling him. Bore a kid without telling him. Died without telling him. After they free him, Hampney tells Ai something he never told anyone. His real name is Kazuna Estin, and that makes her full name, Ai Estin. As his wish is finally fulfilled, Kazuna dies the death he always wanted. Later, Kazuna reawakens as an undead, much to Ai's joy, and along with Sakuma and Scar, they make their way back to Ai's village in the valley while spending as much time with each other as they can. Finally, at the village's graveyard, Ai buries her father, Kazuna, next to her mother, Hana, and mourns their passing. With the burial over, Ai states to Sakuma and Scar that if God abandons their world, she will become a true gravekeeper and save it. Ai, Sakuma, and Scar set out on their journey in a repaired minibus, but Scar points out what they're supposed to do with a boy sleeping in the back seat. The boy wakes up, then falls back asleep again. As they continue on, Sakuma warns Ai to hide the fact that she is a gravekeeper from the world, because many of the deceased in this world still do not want to go to the next and will kill her. When the boy wakes up, he introduces himself as Kiriko, an apprentice in the government office of Oris who fled from thieves. Kiriko knows what strange people their travelers are. Sakuma and Ai are definitely not blood-related, and Scar is a gravekeeper. Sakuma will only drop Kiriko at the gates of Oris and not go in, much to Ai's dismay because she really wants to see the city. Kiriko explains to Ai that Oris is a city of the dead, consisting of almost 1 million undead inhabitants, and due to its high population density, is equivalent to a small country. As Sakuma warns against Ai's desire to see the city, he explains that Oris inhabitants slaughter any gravekeepers who are drawn to the city, just as they pass a mass graveyard in the city outskirts littered with the graves of numerous gravekeepers. As they approach the entrance gates, a particular statue catches Ai's attention. Kiriko explains the statue overlooking the graves. She is Korsho Hake, the guardian goddess of Oris, and she wields the power of death. Afterwards, Kuriko allows Ai and the others to stay in specially designated quarters for living humans within the city. They are met by city officials, Two-Faced, Pox, the castle's lieutenant of guards, and Rek, the Ortis Gate's Minister of Special Foreign Affairs. They are happy to see Kuriko and glad he is back. They are grateful to Ai, even more so when she considers them not monsters because a human is still a human. To show their appreciation, they will grant her anything. Ai requests to enter the city, and Pox and Rek approve her request. Sakuma reminds Ai about everything again, but even so, she wants to see the city where the dead live. The city that her mother dreamed of making. She'll somehow think of a way not to let them discover that she is a gravekeeper. Sakuma agrees to it since this journey belongs to Ai from the start, and he will do as she wishes. Plus, the van needs to be fixed. As they enter, Ai is thrilled to see the dead thriving with life. Then Kuriko kindly asks that they leave once their minibus is repaired. The next morning, she wakes up but sees Scar uncomfortable, and she explains hearing a voice calling out to her. That evening, Ai excitedly goes to explore the city using a mask she obtained from their inn's manager and encounters a mysterious man wearing a lion mask who warns her to leave Ortis before its dark nature reveals itself. Elsewhere, Kuriko meets with Ortis princess Alayulas Hekmatika and remarks that she will be the one to save the world. After her brief encounter with the man in the lion mask, Ai meets up with Kuriko, who insists on escorting her back to the inn. Ai reveals she is a half-gravekeeper and laments that her former village could have turned out a lot better if the townsfolk had adopted the ways of Ortis. Kuriko briefly explains the system and the science of keeping their bodies dry and such. Kuriko admits he is also one of the deceased and tells Ai the story of his origin. Long ago, a group of 5 people were very close together. They talked about marriage and having children, but the latter never came to be because God abandoned the world, so they seek a witch's help. She can grant that wish, but in a twisted way. She took different parts of their bodies and created a child. Kuriko is that child and the 6th person in the group. Ai correctly deduces that Pox and Rek are 2 of the 5, with the others being Diva, Oris, and Velera, who collectively are known as the Fallen 5-Pointed Star. Upon returning to the inn, Kuriko enlists the help of Diva to have a look at the ill Scar. Diva diagnoses Scar that she has an imaginary pregnancy. She is not pregnant, but is showing symptoms of it, maybe because she wants to have a child. She thinks the voice she hears from time to time might be connected. After the diagnosis, Diva continues to fawn over Ai's cuteness. She thanks her for being friends with Kuriko and suggests that she be friends with the princess too. The following day, at Diva's request, Kuriko takes Ai to meet Princess Ulla. She speaks via Kuriko or writes on her notepad. Despite Kuriko being strict about wanting Ai to mind her manners with her, he finds that they both quickly develop a friendship. At the same time, a large mass of cloaked people approach Ortis. That evening, Sakuma says the minibus is nearly fixed and should be living in the city. Ai is sad that the living and dead cannot coexist in Ortis. Sakuma explains how the dead suffered discrimination at the hands of the living and worked hard to achieve Ortis as an independent nation. That's why the living are not welcomed here. Just then, they are interrupted by the sound of the city's bells. Kuriko bursts into the room to inform them of the beginning of a ceremony to kill the group of 105 humans who had approached the city and accept them into Ortis after having lost their will to live. This causes Ai to lament the contradiction this situation puts on her duty as a gravekeeper, while also thinking that Ulla is alive and the ceremony is being performed behind her back. Ai ignores Sakuma's questions and rushes to the citadel. Unbeknownst to her, Ulla herself is the one performing the ceremony. Ai arrives at the citadel, and much to her horror, she witnesses Kuriko removing the covers, blocking Ulla's sense of sight, at which point her gaze extracts the life from the people, who are hence reborn as undead. Just as Ulla turns her gaze upon Ai, Sakuma rescues her at the last second, and they are joined by the man in the lion mask. The man explains that Ulla is Korisho Hake, with her power of death being Ortis's dark nature. Anyone she looks at, hears her voice, or touches will die. The man knows it because he was alive until a year ago. Children before the age of 15 have a choice to stay alive or dead. Ai refuses to believe that Ulla knows the true nature of her power, believing that Allah had been deceived just as she was. At which point, Kiriko appears and confirms this while accepting responsibility for the deception. Kiriko further explains his desire to protect Allah from the harsh reality of their world ever since being appointed as her teacher by Oris's elders, and that he wants the deception to last until Allah remains the last living human, thus making her powers meaningless. I counters by remembering her father's fear, but Kiriko remains committed to his decision because of his love for Allah and instead questions whether I would do the same thing to her. After all that, I goes to talk to Allah. She reveals her true identity and the village she was raised in. Then she tells her that the people she thinks are alive are actually dead. Anyone coming into contact with her power will die. Although Kiriko has been lying to her, it was to protect her. Kiriko laments that this is the truth and understands if she hates and won't forgive him. Allah explains to them that she suspects something has always been kept hidden from her, but chooses to contently accept everything. Her ability, Kiriko's painful task, Oris's nature, and herself. She only laments being unable to truly interact with Ai as friends should, but embraces her nonetheless through Kiriko. Afterwards, Allah takes Ai, Sakuma, and Scar to visit her older sister, Celica Hekmatika, a baby frozen in time. Kiriko explains that Allah's mother hatefully wished death upon all humans at her deathbed, granting the unborn Allah her power, which was rejected by her twin, Celica. Finally, much to everyone's shock, Scar realizes Celica has been calling out to her, and upon Scar's touch, the child enters the flow of time. Allah reveals that she knew Celica was simply waiting for the right person, at which point Scar adopted Celica as her daughter with Allah's blessing. The next day, a mysterious youth with a ghostly companion observes Ai and his friends, as they leave Oris and remarks that he and Ai are one and the same. In a clock tower, the mysterious boy Alice Color introduces himself to Ai. We go a little back in time to when Sakuma asked Ai if she wanted to go to school, as they would all eventually close due to a lack of children. Sakuma has to temporarily leave the sleeping Ai and Scar alone when he goes to make a phone call, and then he witnesses some strangers kidnapping Ai. Ai is taken to an unusual school, Gorin Academy, where the students have special abilities. In that school, Ai is strictly welcomed by the headmistress, Majida. Ai seems to be okay with this since she gets to wear fresh clothes. Due to her naive personality, Ai initially sees nothing odd about the school, and she makes a few friends. But when she is told those who enter Gorin Academy can never leave, Ai thinks they're joking because she needs to leave this place or else she can't save the world. In the girls' bath, Ai reveals her human gravekeeper heritage and learns that this isolated institution houses kids with special abilities. Like Volrath, she has super strength. Twins Mimi and Mei are actually their third sister, Momo, who was buried by a gravekeeper. Confused? In short, Momo lives inside them. Run can breathe underwater while Tanya is blind, so she sees objects in the form of sound. She senses that Ai's aura is like a rainbow at night. Suddenly, a loud crash is heard. Alice and two other boys accidentally break into the bath, angering the girls. He and the other guys, Hardy and Gigi, are roped in. Accusing them of trying to peep on them, they are going to punish them for this and won't hear any excuse, even if they say it's a misunderstanding. When Ollie's finally gets their attention, he reveals they were digging a path to the sewers that would have them escape from here. Thanks to Hardy's power to eat up inorganic stuff, Ollie's wanted to complete the tunnel with a big explosion, but his calculation was off. I wonders why the school is doing this, so Tanya explains that as people stopped dying, children stopped being born, and this caused a decrease in the number of students. The government has a policy that pays a hefty amount to the school per student. So now you know why they want to increase the number of students. Ollie's blames the ghost for this mess up, D. She makes herself appear, freaking out some of them because she walks through walls, and reveals she thought the girls should also know about this plan. That's why he led him to blow a hole in the bath. She explains that she can appear anywhere, irrespective of place and time, while lacking a physical body. She can do lots of things, like whisper trivial or important information to people, and she can even take control of them. In a way, she is like granting people's wishes. She is here because she is currently possessing Ollie's. Dee was the one who whispered to Ai to come to the clock tower. I assert she never heard her voice and went there out of curiosity. Dee doesn't believe her. She also mentions that she has been observing since she came to Oris, and that the meeting between them and Ollie's was fated to happen. I and the other students discuss an escape plan. Volrath and Hardy want to run away, and Rune aspires to go to Aspia, an underwater city. However, some of them don't have a place to go, especially Tanya, who refuses to leave due to family issues. Nevertheless, I encourages Gigi and the Jeddenberg sisters, Mimietta and Mimipo, to leave as a way to start a new life if they want. But Tanya is still unsure, and she envies Ai's willpower. Later, after class, I personally talks to Tanya. She is still stubborn. Unlike I, who has her fellow travelers to return to and is worried about, Tanya herself doesn't. She was born blind and always heard her parents in sadness. Even if they accepted her sound sight gift, the villagers did not. She came here on her own accord. I then tells her story of the village in which she grew up and the gravekeeper she is. She buried everyone in her village. That's why she knows Tanya will also be fine. Alice has finally broken the metal cages that will lead to their freedom. The next night, now with the iron grill broken down, the students prepare their escape. However, I chooses to stay behind for Tanya's sake. Fortunately, Tanya decides to leave Gorin Academy as well. Just as they all make it outside the campus, suddenly the main gates open, and the headmistress, Magata, gives them one last chance to return and threatens to shoot. Since nobody is budging, she draws her gun and fires. However, thanks to Alice's special ability, Buzzer Beater, he is able to shoot down her bullets. Knowing she is outmatched, she allows the students to leave. Sakuma arrives to pick up Ai and brings the others along as well. I wonders where Scar is, and Sakuma answers that she has abandoned Celica. As the gang continues their journey, they follow Celica's directions to Scar's location. Ai writes her usual letter back to Ulla and Kiriko about her recent adventure. After escaping Gorin Academy, Tanya returns to her parents' home, as the other students decide to stay with Tanya's family until they decide their own destinations. Driving through wastelands, Sakuma explains that Scar disappeared while she was at Gola, and they are using Celica as a guide since she was attracted to her back in Ordis. Sakuma has doubts about whether they should find Scar because, as a gravekeeper, it's her job to track down the dead. Even so, I wants to hear it from her mouth and wants to see her. When they pass by a signboard with a cake, Dee suddenly realizes that the day before was Alice's birthday, much to Ai's dismay. Alice doesn't have time to do such trivial things because saving the world is more important. However, I doesn't want him to be like that, just like how her father once acted. And so eventually they celebrate Alice's belated birthday. It's not the best looking cake Sakuma made, but hey, you can't complain. At night, Alice apologizes and thanks Ai for her kindness. As they continue their journey the next day, they enter a valley of desert. Sakuma slams the brakes, and it seems there are lots of craters and crystals. They almost got hit by lightning as they witnessed the phenomenal birth of a gravekeeper. They encounter numerous identical gravekeepers being born and passing by. Sakuma explains that identical gravekeepers are categorized as families, and he also notes that some gravekeepers are unique, like Ai's mother. Celica seems to be pointing the way ahead, but Dee feels it is a bad idea to go on. She wants to leave, but I hope she will since they've traveled together. Dee slaps her, but her ghostly hand just went through her face. Dee then flies off into the sky. Ai, Sakuma, and Alice walked through the fog when they unknowingly got separated. They all began to see illusions within the fog of their lives' most significant memories. Sakuma sees his deceased wife and daughter. Alice notices a strange open window of his past, and I sees her parents, Kizuna and Hana. Confused and depressed, I begins to lose hope until she spontaneously remembers what Kizuna and Hana taught her were the essentials in life. Finally, they find Scar, and Sakuma reassures her that Celica is important to her, no matter if she is a gravekeeper, and he promises to protect her, while I and Alice think he is proposing to her. With Scar back with the traveling gang, I remembers Alice telling her his friends from classes 3-4 were being held captive in the city called Ostia. A flashback shows the city of Ostia with an enormous Ferris wheel. Class 3-4 is upset that Alice has burned down the entire town, but suddenly, everything returns to normal. Alice explains that they are in a closed space where the world resets itself to default values as if destruction and change never happened. It's the same with humans. He takes out a gun and starts shooting everyone. Only D is left. But there is only blood on the floor, and the bodies are missing. The next time he looks back, the blood is gone, the place is back to normal, and he sees his friends entering the school gate, waving at him as though nothing happened. Arriving at a desolated Ostia, Alice leads I, Sakuma, Scar, and Celica to the sealed Class 3-4, accessed through a school building. The world of Classes 3-4 is sealed here, and it's like a separate world once you go through it. He warns them that those not from Classes 3-4 cannot get out of here until the phenomenon is solved, but I still chooses to help, and Sakuma and Scar state they will follow her wherever she goes. They are welcomed by the people of Ostia in an out-of-sync winter, and walking towards Alice's home, they are greeted by D, who now has a physical form. Settling at their new home, they notice that the world is 14 years in the past and question Alice, but he is reluctant to answer just yet. Another flashback shows the first time Alice and D left Ostia, and D is shocked to find herself as a ghost. Later, I transfers into Class 3-4 and meets the classmates of Alice and D. I observes the place and then tells Alice that this is a world probably created by someone's wish, which Alice confirms. That night, Alice finally explains that Ostia is trapped in a temporal loop that resets every July 28th, and thus far, Alice has brought a total of 35,695 living people into Ostia in order to shake up the world. He also reveals that D is probably preventing him from solving the temporal loop for an unknown reason. The final scene is a flashback of D falling out of a window. I begins her investigation of Class 3-4. Alice confirms that he occasionally brings clues that he finds in the outside world, but D secretly keeps destroying them. All 35,695 have failed, and I, as the 35,596th person, is no exception. She will make her stay. Soon, a month passes, and I celebrates her 13th birthday. Sakuma, Scar, and the students of Class 3-4 throw a party for her. Alice's gift to I is her repaired gravekeeper's shovel. He reminds her that she mustn't forget her duties as a gravekeeper, and remarks that people's wishes shouldn't always be granted, as it won't help them move forward. Alice mentions that D has changed as if she is hiding something, and she believes Class 3-4 is a better place than the outside world. As the months go by and I continues her investigation, she volunteers with Alice for the school's cultural festival, which causes a slight time paradox. Alice explains that, as the choice is always tied, and they ended up doing the play in the usual loop, I's vote changed that, and the world is trying to come up with an excuse to return to its original way. In the library, I is trying to find clues that Alice has left behind, but D usually finds them first and destroys them. Luckily, I manages to find a clue that D failed to notice. Reading an article concerning about a student from Class 3-4 who had died, but D caught her before she saw the name. D reveals that she first appeared in her ghost form. She wandered around with Alice, unsure of her existence. Slowly, as she found clues together with him to save Class 3-4, she finally understood. Her memories came back. She was changing curtains, not realizing the window was open. She slipped and fell to her death. At that time, the class was horrified and wished that it never happened, and that things would stay like they were forever, which created the temporal loop. That's how she came back alive. I realizes that D is in love with Alice, and D asks her not to tell him. D feels that she is the only one who can truly understand Alice. However, when she witnesses Alice and I playing basketball together, he starts to feel jealous and sad. I asks if Alice would sacrifice someone just to save his class. Alice responds that it doesn't matter because he will save everyone from Class 3-4, even if it means sacrificing anything for that cause. Hearing this, D decides she will create her own world by first destroying the old. In the morning, when D talks to I, she wants to reveal everything to Alice. But she wants I to hear it and be by her side when she says it to him. At the basketball court, I meets up with Alice and wonders what will happen next. D then arrives in the classroom and fires her gun at one of them, and the rest of the students are shocked when they see him revive. D is going to tell them everything. Actually, They have forgotten about it and will just refresh their memory. And so they remember the day Dee died. They wanted to forget about it. They made a wish for that never to happen. Dee notes that they wished for an eternal loop and could have just wished for her to return to life. As they are still in this loop, she suggests that they redo everything again from the beginning. The world begins to change, and because of too many contradictions, it is beginning to reset itself. I and Alice know this is Dee's doing and rush to the classroom, while Dee attempts to repeat that same day by jumping out of the window again as a means to reset the world and herself. Meanwhile, Sakuma and Scar witness a fog wave that threatens to swallow Ostya. Dee falls out of the window, hoping to start everything all over again, but to her horror, she sees Alice's dead body below. She is pulled back up by Alice, but he slips. Thankfully, he is saved by I and the rest of Class 3-4. As the fog wave retreats, Alice realizes the truth and remembers how he died while saving Dee from falling. I didn't see that plot twist. He convinces Dee and the other students of Class 3-4 to depart for the outside world and experience real life, thanking them for caring about him so much. Hopefully, they will remember him, even if it's just a small part. However, I want to find a way to save him. But as Dee points out, it is impossible. He's the kind of person who'll work hard for the sake of others despite knowing he himself will disappear. Alice is glad that he got to travel with Dee. Just about any door or window becomes a portal to the outside. Everyone makes their way into it as the world crumbles. I is the last one left with him and calls him an awful person. She feels he brought her to this world just to make him disappear. She knows he wants to be with everyone and doesn't want to disappear. Alice reveals that he was buried by a gravekeeper in the outside world. One last hug before Alice pushes I through the portal. Sakuma, Scar, Celica, Dee, and all the citizens have evacuated to the outside world. I is seen in front of Alice's grave, and he appears next to her, asking why she had to save him by having wished for his continued existence in the outside world, and she smiles. Thank you for watching till the end, and please don't forget to subscribe. See you next time, and peace out.